Welcome to everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I know this is an unusual time, but for a little while, we're doing this to accommodate the Mincha and Marv. So we'll keep you posted on the different times as the sun moves one direction or another. And we, again, try to accommodate it so nobody misses Mincha or Marv. Of course, you can always say an early Mincha. I talked about the fact in the Parsha Shiur why we call it a Mincha Gedola. It means you have a larger window in which to say Mincha. So thanks. We're very grateful for that halachic addition of a Mincha that doesn't have to wait until just before sunset. Okay, so we're going to talk today on the subject of, is God clothes-minded? C-L-O-T-H-E-S. I don't think God is closed-minded, but clothes-minded, well, that's a different story. Our Parsha of Tetzaveh deals to a great extent with the idea of clothes. About 40 psukim are devoted to the clothes primarily worn by the Kohen Gadol, who actually wore 8 different garments. If there was, for example, on Yom Kippur, the regular Kohanim, they had 4 special types of clothes. And clearly there is an emphasis being placed on what they are wearing. We all know the expression, clothes make the man. I actually think it would sound better if it's clothes make the woman, since women seem to wear clothes much more effectively than men. But in any case, we know that there must be some special importance placed on the wearing of clothes. If a Kohen was missing any of these particular garments and he brought the karban, well, it would be invalid and he would be committing a sin. It'd have to be done over again. So the clothes are important. The Torah calls these special clothes, or says they're worn lechavod u'letifaret, loosely translated for honor and glory. It's hard to, we're going to try to understand what that means and some of the different interpretations. It's not only pomp and circumstance, but that clearly is one part of the clothes, but there's more to it. Let's start for a moment with, like any idea in Judaism, we go right to the source, and that is the word itself that describes this particular story, particular person, this particular idea. So here in discussing clothes, we have to look at 2 of the words in Hebrew that stand for clothes. One is beged, and the other is levush. And this brings us back all the way to Gan Eden. We know of the many stories in Gan Eden, certainly the most crucial story is the sin of Adam and Chava. And once they had sinned, they became ashamed of their nakedness, and they took a fig leaf in order to, we still use that expression, to try to cover up something wrong that we've done. They became aware of nakedness, which before that, the world was a pure world. You might say it was the original nudist colony. And then once suddenly sin was introduced, then clothes, or the absence of them, became a part of sin. Recognizing one's nakedness, in a sense, in a more Kabbalistic sense, being stripped of one's purity when you stumble and commit a sin. So the word beged connects to the word boged, which means a traitor. In other words, Adam went against his creator and went against the rule he was meant to follow. And so he had to put on clothes because of this levush, from the word busha. I think we're fairly overusing that word of busha, but it means shame or humiliation. And the clothes were meant to cover that. It's a difficult story to try to understand what the clothes have to do with that. But in essence, clothes can serve to focus our attention on externals rather than the innermost vital essence of a person. So in a sense, the clothes betray what's really most important, not the outer trappings of a person, but the neshama of each one of us. So in a sense, then clothes are reminding us of that original sin, our descent from purity. And on the one hand, it's reminiscent of what we did. On the other hand, it's also trying to connect our clothes to a godly ideal. And that's a form of atonement for this original sin. The clothes that we wore then, we were humiliated, and they were a kind of signal or a kind of signpost that we did something wrong. But now the clothes the Kohen Gadol is wearing, and others, as we'll see in a moment, that is maybe turning this into something more positive. But it clearly, there is this duality to clothes that we're going to talk about. If you look through the book of Bereshit, you'll notice very clearly that clothes involve some deception or betrayal throughout these many stories, not just of Adam and Chava and the fig leaf. For example, Yaakov wears Esav's clothes when he's going to take the bracha, the birthright, by deceit. Tamar wears a disguise to deceive her father-in-law Yehuda in that story. The brothers, of course, use Yosef's blood-stained coat of many colors to deceive, which some people hold, by the way, was more of a cloak than a coat, be that as it may, or a cape instead of a full-fledged coat. There's a whole discussion about that. But they use that to deceive their father Yaakov into thinking that Yosef had been killed. And then you also have the story with Potiphar and Yosef. Potiphar uses the cloak that Yosef left behind as evidence for her false accusation that she had been raped and had him imprisoned. So there are a lot of negative connotations to clothes throughout the book of Bereshit, beginning with Adam. And so perhaps one of the ideas is that by now glorifying the Kohen with all these different clothes, perhaps what we're trying to do is, as we'd say, change the paradigm, that clothes don't have to be associated with the negative, but can actually be associated with something positive. And that is the avodah, the rituals performed by the Kohen Gadol in the Mishkan or in the Beit HaMikdash. One of the purposes of clothes, as we try to just examine this idea of kavod and tiferet, one purpose is to promote clearly the midah of modesty. Clothes do not have to be bland or colorless. That's something that has developed, obviously, in Haredi circles, but no one says that clothes have to be without color. We see, for example, the Sephardic chief rabbis. They're certainly religious people, and they're wearing very, very colorful clothes, robes and turbans and all kinds of colors, beautiful colors. And that indicates that there is a place for that. It doesn't have to be completely bland. But clothes do have to project a certain respect for oneself and for others. They should promote a sense of class, or you might say understated elegance, that people, when they see you, they understand you are, we'd say in Yiddish, balabatish. You're dressed well. And also cleanliness. That's also important. Even a kind of conformity that prevents you from becoming a spectacle that debases our stature. In other words, you're not wearing clothes that are so wildly different than what quote unquote normal people are wearing. It's hard to know exactly, where to draw the line here, but you don't really want to make a spectacle of yourself. Rabbi Sachs talks about the fact that clothes convey a sense of aesthetic beauty. And by being beautiful, so to speak, we're echoing the fact that God created a world of beauty with many different colors and many different textures. And wearing the right clothes is a kind of art, as we know, people who are who know how to dress for different occasions. It's an art, and it testifies to the master artist of Hashem, who created this world just with the right blend and putting everything together as it should be. The Rav Soloveitchik has a lot of discussion about clothes as well, and he says that clothes are part of a uniform that you wear to announce who you are, and certainly in some cases to project the office and authority of the person wearing the clothes. The Kohen Gadol is projecting the fact that he is in charge of the karbanot, and this is his uniform. It's the same thing goes for a king. A king is going to wear different clothes, and of course you see this very vividly in England, where there are so many different types of clothes. They're changing clothes at ceremonies, and every article of clothing means something in British culture. I'm not expert on that, but you'll hear the commentators talk about putting on a particular jacket or a particular hat or particular jewelry that conveys something. And of course, this is true of a doctor. People want a doctor to look like a doctor, and certainly a soldier. That's also important. The uniforms imply that these people have been selected, that these individuals have been selected by the people, and they enjoy certain privileges that maybe others don't have. And that's implied by their uniform. And also, I think what's important, the uniforms build up your self-esteem, and they actually serve to motivate one's performance. And your uniform reminds you of who you are, as well as reminding others of who you are. And there's a very fascinating story that I heard from Rav Ezra Rosenfeld when he spoke about that he was the head of Tzomet for a long time. And the posek of Tzomet was Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach of blessed memory. And he asked the question, if a soldier gets his uniform dirty on Shabbat, is it permitted to launder another uniform and to give to the soldier so he's wearing a clean uniform? And Rav Shlomo Zalman said, not only are you allowed to launder, if you don't have another clean uniform handy, not only are you allowed to launder a uniform for that soldier, but if he's in the field, you should get in the Jeep on Shabbos and drive as quickly as possible and give the clean uniform to the soldier, because he said that wearing the uniform is not just identifying him as a soldier, it's actually giving this soldier the persona and the strength to be a good soldier. And it actually could be life-threatening if he doesn't have that uniform on. When you don that uniform, you really become a different person. And therefore, he said, get that uniform to him as quickly as possible, even on Shabbat, because that's part of his ability to function as a soldier. That's why some say the techelet is used in a couple of different clothes. You know, the techelet, and Tzvi is here, he's the expert on techelet. But the Gemara says that the techelet resembles the sea resembles the sky resembles the throne of glory. That's in the Gemara. So the idea is when you put on techelet, you should be reminded that you are an emissary of Hashem, and you are both the servant and the partner of Hashem, and that gives you a certain status and really makes you feel better and feel more elevated when you're about to perform the task that the Kohen Gadol has to do. There is a special aspect of humility that the Rav says it's indispensable to positions of power, to understand that a person's authority comes not necessarily from within, but sometimes from without, interestingly enough. Hashem, therefore, he says, wanted the Kohen Gadol to realize that in essence, he was really undeserving of his position. I mean, he is the kind of the conduit to God. And how can a human being actually reach that level? So says the Rav, he really no human being can really deserve that. When he wears the uniform, the Kohen Gadol recognizes that he filled his role not necessarily due to his own merits, which were insufficient for anyone to assume that high office, but that he would become humble and say, I'm not necessarily so great. You shouldn't let this run away with him to say, I am almost a demigod because I can bring these offerings. No, not really. You were chosen. Somebody has to do it. Obviously, you do have to have certain qualifications, but don't let it go to your head. And the same is true of a king, he says. Without the donning of the royal garments, he would not have the authority to act as king. And if you want really to see a proof of this, that's why you rarely, if ever, will see a leader, including and maybe especially rabbinic leaders, and especially rebbes, out of their uniform. You couldn't imagine the Lubavitcher Rebbe who's in, sweatpants and a university t-shirt. It just doesn't happen. It's not going to happen. You'll never see it. If there are such pictures, believe me, they've been confiscated and they're no longer in the public domain. Because again, there is a connection between the person and the uniform. A uniform can create pride and honor and respect, but as we said, it can also project humility. If not for your uniform, you'd be like anyone else, and you do want to command respect, and that does require a certain uniform, at least for people who are in a leadership position. Aaron needed the holiness of these garments, the Kedushat HaBegadim, in order to ensure they would save him from that sin of gaiva, of conceit and haughtiness, says the Rav, and ensure that arrogance would not become part of his personality. Interestingly enough, the exception to that rule was the first Kohen Gadol. And the first Kohen Gadol, as we know, was not Aaron, but was Moshe Rabbeinu. And because he was the humblest of people, so Chazal tell us that he didn't wear the special clothes when he brought the offerings at the inauguration of the Mishkan. Interesting bit of trivia there. And he had a simple white cloak because we weren't really worried about his ability to maintain his modesty. While it's true that very few of us, says the Rav, could ever become the Kohen Gadol and be zochet to wear king-like garments, nevertheless, he says, we are the sons and daughters of kings. We are royalty. And quotes the Gemara in the Gemara Shabbat. Abaye teaches, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, Rav Shimon, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Akiva maintain that the entire Jewish people are the children of kings. And therefore, that tells us we do have to maintain a certain level of kind of royalty and even royal dress. Now, the different items in the among the clothes in the Beit HaMikdash, they all, we're told, atone for certain things. The ephod atoned for avodah zarah, if somebody had committed avodah zarah, and the Kohen prays while it's in that, a person's forgiven. The Choshen Mishpat for perversion of justice. The Me'il, the coat, the robe, that atoned for Lashon Hara. And there's an interesting story about that. The hem of the Me'il was a robe comprised alternately of gold bells and pomegranates, which were spun from different materials. They weren't metal, they were cloth pomegranates. And the Gemara says, let an item which produces a sound, because the bells of the robe chimed when the Kohen Gadol would walk in, let that garment atone for a matter involving a sound, which the Gemara says was Lashon Hara. And the pomegranate there had its own purpose, not just the bell reminding you kind of like for whom the bell tolls and saying, be careful, ring the bell if somebody's going to say something they shouldn't be saying. But the pomegranate figures in there as well. The pomegranate is an expression of everything that's good about the Jewish people. The Gemara says, even the empty people in the nation are filled with mitzvot, like a pomegranate is filled with seeds. By tradition, 613 seeds in a pomegranate. Personally, I never counted them, but if somebody wants to do that for homework, feel free to come back with the report. So there will always be redeeming features in any person. If you choose to ignore these positive points, then you will see the person is empty. That's what the Gemara says, even the empty people, so to speak. And you may come to speak Lashon Hara and slander about this person because you feel there's nothing good to say about him. And therefore, the Torah places the pomegranate next to the bell at the bottom of the robe to say, when you ring your bell and make a sound about a fellow Jew, try to make it a positive sound, a pomegranate sound. There's plenty of positive in others if you're prepared to see it. And therefore, this me'il with its pomegranate and bells is the antidote to Lashon Hara, which is a beautiful idea. There's also the tzitz. The tzitz was the crown, the golden crown that the Kohen Gadol wore, which had on it Kadosh Lashem, holy to God. And the same idea here as well. The tzitz kind of creates a certain persona and mirrors the ideal of a total dedication to Hashem. You wear it at the top of your head, so like from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, you're dedicated to Hashem, and it's on constant display. Everybody can see it, and it is compared by the Gemara to for today. Obviously, what does the tzitz connect to today? That would be tefillin. So the tefillin are worn almost like this crown, this tzitz. And it's particularly an apt crown for the Kohen Gadol because he's trying to mirror this ideal of total dedication to Hashem that's unequivocal, it's on constant display, you can't run away from it. And the Meshech Chochmah tries to demonstrate that the tzitz constitutes the equivalent of Hashem's tefillin. There is this concept, and we say it, of course, in the Anim Zemirot, Kesher Tefillin Hera Le'anav, that God showed his cosmic tefillin to Moshe Rabbeinu. Finally, there's another item that I want to just say a few words about that's very fascinating, and that, of course, is we know the precious gems of the breastplate. There were 12 precious stones. What were they? I'll just tell you very quickly. Ruby, emerald, topaz, carbuncle, sapphire, beryl, jacinth, agate, if I'm pronouncing it right, amethyst, amber or aquamarine, onyx, and jasper. This comes from Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan in the Living Torah. He's the expert at identifying these gems. So just to say, the gems on the whole, they represent the 12 tribes, right? And they're trying to symbolize that each and every Jew is precious to God, like a precious gem. We knew actually a jeweler back in the old country, and he had created for his wife a bracelet with all 12 of these precious gems. So these are, I guess, semi-precious. And the Rav Kaplan doesn't include a diamond in them. But in any case, they're precious gems. And each of them stand for the Shvatim. The first one, let's say, is the ruby. And the ruby, and it works out well because it stands for Ruvain or Reuben. So it's a nickname for Reuven is Ruby. And it connects to the fact the red of the ruby connects to the dudaim, the mandrakes that Reuven found. And they had, by tradition, these aphrodisiacal qualities. Rachel wanted them. Leah's son had them. Basically, they worked out a trade, and Leah gave the dudaim to Rachel, which actually helped her to become pregnant with Yosef. And in return, Leah received 2 extra nights with Yaakov, and from those 2 nights were born Yisachar and Zevulun. They had that, by tradition, this relationship, this cooperative relationship where one is the financier, the other one is the scholar, and kind of indicating that the girls worked together as well and helped each other. And that's symbolized by this symbiotic relationship of Yisachar and Zevulun. Finally, the last of the gems is one of the most interesting, and that is the jasper. It connects to the youngest of the tribes, and that, of course, is Binyamin. And the name in Hebrew for this gem is Yashfeh or Yashfeh. And Chazal say that it's a combination of two words, Yesh Peh. What does that have to do with Binyamin? So they say the word Yesh Peh means he has a mouth, or he had a mouth. The idea was that Binyamin knew what happened to his brother Yosef. He knew that the older brothers, what they had done to him and sold him into slavery, but he did not reveal it to his father Yaakov because he did not want to completely destroy the family dynamic and the family structure and turn one against the other. So although he had a mouth, Yesh Peh, he knew how to keep it closed. He knew how to hold back when it was important. And that is a tremendous quality. And it's a quality that specifically connects to the family or the lineage of Rachel. You see it with Yosef, where he doesn't reveal who he is in Egypt. Rachel, by the way, also does not say anything when her sister Leah marries Yaakov. And of course, Rachel wants to marry Yaakov, and she was actually a part of this, helping Leah. She doesn't say anything. She holds back. So you see it by Rachel, you see it by Yosef, you see it coming up soon by Esther. She's also related to Rachel from the same lineage, right, from Binyamin. Mordechai, right, identifies a Benjaminite, Ish Yemini, and she doesn't say anything until the appropriate moment. She will not reveal what her lineage is. And you see this down through history, through the bloodline, the DNA of Rachel, and it's a fantastic idea. So the final word, in a sense, of these 12 stones, the final word is sometimes you just need to keep your mouth shut. And sometimes the best thing you can say is the word not said at all. And that, I think we all recognize and understand how much trouble we get into and how much disunity we cause by saying the wrong thing. Sometimes just hold back. That's a tremendous and very, very difficult quality that many, if not most, if not all of us struggle to achieve, being able to hold back when necessary. So that's another of the garments, the special clothes that were worn. And all of them, I think, have tremendous lessons. We really just kind of scratched the surface, but maybe it'll give us a little different insight and a greater insight when we think about the clothes that we ourselves put on and how they can be used as a instrument for the Chavod Tiferet, the greater glory and honor of Hashem. So thank you all for tuning in. I wish you well. We should hear good news. And of course, our soldiers should remain safe and secure. And let me just take a moment because I want to read the prayer for the soldiers. Hang on one second, everybody. I just got a new shipment of these prayers for the soldier. So soldiers, anybody who doesn't have one, and thank you to Rachel El Rom and Yochanan El Rom for donating a new several hundred more. We've given out several thousand of these, and of course, it's good to have it with you in a Sidur. Mishaberach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'Yivarech et Chayalei Tzva Hagana Yisrael ha'omdim al mishmar Artzeinu v'arei Eloheinu migvul halvanon ועד מדבר מצרים, מן הים הגדול, עד לבוא הערבה ביבשה, באוויר ובים. ייתן אדוני את אויבינו הקמים עלינו, ניגפים לפניהם, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה, Vishlach bracha v'atzlacha b'kol ma'aseh yedehem, yadber son einu tachtehem, v'yatrein b'chet Yeshua v'ateret nitzachon, v'kuyam behem ha'katuv, k'Adonai Elohechem, ha'lechem lachem, l'ilachem lachem imavechem, l'oshirechem, v'nomar, Amen. Our soldiers should be safe, the hostages should be freed, the wounded should hopefully be healed, and we should dress for success in every way. Shabbat shalom to everybody. See you next week. As far as I know now, same time, same place, but I will keep you posted by WhatsApp and in the Parsha sheet. And everybody stay safe. Shabbat shalom.